There are moments that split your life into before and after. I didn't know it then, but that Friday night on the rooftop was one of them. Ellie and I hadn't really been ourselves for a while. The kind of distance that creeps in slowly. Missed dinners, late nights justified by work, and conversations that drifted into autopilot. We had a rhythm, sure, but it wasn't music anymore. It was survival. So when I heard about her company throwing a dinner party for her boss's birthday, one of those polished, corporate events at a rooftop restaurant in Miami, I decided to crash it. Not in a dramatic way. Just show up, remind her I was still here, still in this with her. I thought it would be romantic. We hadn't had a spontaneous moment in months. I threw on a blazer, grabbed a small box of her favorite chocolates, and headed downtown. The building was one of those modern high-rises with a private elevator and a host in a suit at the bottom who checked my ID twice before letting me up. I told him I was surprising my wife. He gave me a grin like he thought I was some kind of hero. Maybe I was trying to be. The elevator opened directly onto the rooftop, and the first thing that hit me was the music. Low, elegant jazz drifting over the crowd. There were candles on every table, waiters with trays of champagne, and conversations in a dozen directions. I scanned the room, looking for Ellie's red curls, the way she always stood with one hand resting lightly on her hip when she was in a group. But I didn't find her in the center with the rest of the crowd. No, she was off to the side, seated at a dimly lit two-top under a heater. And she wasn't alone. The man across from her was about my age, maybe a little older. Clean cut, expensive watch, confident posture, the kind of guy who doesn't second-guess himself. They were leaning in close, heads tilted like they were trading secrets. Ellie laughed, then reached out and touched his wrist. That move, that familiar, flirty move, I'd seen it before. I just hadn't seen her use it on someone else. And then she took his phone, actually picked it up, typed something, and handed it back like they had some private joke only the two of them understood. I froze. For a second, I couldn't even step forward. My hand still clutched the gift box, now awkward and pointless. My stomach twisted in that slow, sinking way, and I felt completely out of place, like a stranger in my own story. When Ellie finally noticed me, everything about her changed in an instant. Her body jerked upright, and she practically leapt back from the table. Then, like she realized she'd overreacted, she smiled too widely, waved at me, and called my name louder than necessary. I forced a smile, walked over, and she introduced me with a chirpy tone that made my skin crawl. "This is Alex, my husband," she said, emphasizing the last word like it was a punchline. The guy stood and shook my hand. Firm grip, practiced smile. His name was Caleb. He said he worked with Ellie in the analytics division, then made a joke about how she was the real boss. She laughed. I didn't. I sat with them for a bit. Caleb excused himself after a few minutes, and Ellie immediately shifted gears. She acted like it was all casual, that I just interrupted a completely normal conversation. She asked how my day was, complimented my shirt, kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine. But I couldn't shake the image of that moment. Her fingers on his wrist, the ease between them, and the flash of panic on her face when she saw me. It was like I had glimpsed something I wasn't supposed to see. Back at home, I waited for her to bring it up, to say something, anything, but she didn't. She talked about the food, how fancy the desserts were, and how everyone was obsessed with the venue. Not a single word about Caleb or that private little corner of the rooftop. I didn't want to be the insecure husband. I didn't want to spiral over a laugh and a wrist touch, but something about it just lodged in me, like a splinter. Later, she went upstairs to shower, said she was tired. I sat on the couch, chewing on the silence, until I remembered she'd asked me earlier in the week to grab something from her purse. Her keys, maybe, or a receipt. So I opened it. I didn't expect to find anything, but there it was, tucked behind her wallet. A business card. Caleb Hunter, Senior Optimization Manager. On the back, in handwriting that wasn't hers, was a message, "Next time you're spot, I'll bring the wine winking face." My throat tightened. I flipped the card over again, as if it might say something different. But no, It was clear and it was intentional. This wasn't a new colleague. This was someone who felt comfortable enough to flirt, confidently, publicly, and in writing. I slipped the card back into her purse and sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. When Ellie came downstairs in sweats, she flopped beside me like nothing was off. She leaned against my shoulder, scrolling her phone, asking what I wanted to do for dinner tomorrow. I answered her, but my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Inside, a question had been planted, and it would grow roots fast. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Ellie, staring at the ceiling while her breathing slowed into that soft rhythm she always had after falling asleep. It used to bring me peace. Now it just felt foreign. She looked so calm, peaceful even. Meanwhile, I was locked in a mental loop, cycling through every strange moment from the last few years I had brushed off. How many times had I looked the other way? There was that business trip to Charlotte last year that got extended last minute. No itinerary, no photos, no receipts. She claimed her company was testing some new vendor, but when I looked up the firm later, I couldn't even find a website. I told myself it was probably some back-end logistics partner I didn't understand. Then there were the training weekends. She always came back refreshed from those. Said the hotel beds were better than ours. Joked about how she got more sleep on work trips than she ever did at home. I used to laugh at that. Now, I realized she never brought home handouts or even mentioned what the trainings were about. I remembered once, maybe a year ago, she came home wearing cologne that wasn't hers. Not mine either. Something sharper. I noticed immediately and said something. She brushed it off, said she got stuck in a packed Uber pool, and the guy next to her must have been marinated in it. It sounded plausible enough. I didn't push, but now that explanation seemed thinner than a paper wall. And then there was the earring. It was about 6 months back. I found a single gold hoop tucked in the lining of her coat pocket. Small, expensive looking, not the sort of thing she usually wore. I asked about it. She claimed she'd grabbed it from a clearance bin at a boutique. Said she was going to see if she could find the other one online. But she never wore it. Never mentioned it again. That earring lived in our junk drawer for a while before disappearing. I didn't even notice it was gone until now. The more I let my mind wander, the clearer the pattern became. Her phone had turned into a permanent extension of her hand. She used to leave it lying around all the time. These days, she took it into the bathroom, the laundry room, even the garage. And whenever I'd get too close, the screen would conveniently turn off, or she'd flip it over. Once, I asked her if she was texting someone. Her response? A scoff, followed by a defensive laugh. Wow, you're being weird. I stopped asking after that. She used to ask about my day. We'd share stories from work, gossip about our coworkers. Now, conversations had shrunk to bullet points. Groceries, carpooling, what we were out of, whether Brennan needed to be picked up early from soccer. Emotionally, it was like we lived on 2 different islands connected by a checklist. And Brennan, that thought hit me harder than I expected. I love that kid with everything I have. He's 7 now, sharp as a tack, stubborn like his mom, and so full of energy it's like he runs on battery packs. But lately, when I looked at him, really looked at him, something gnawed at me. He didn't look like me. Not even a little. Ellie's family has olive-toned skin, darker features, and Brennan had definitely taken after her. But when I stood next to him at the mirror, I couldn't help but notice how much he resembled someone else. His bone structure, the shape of his eyes, even the way he laughed. None of it mirrored me. I joked once, back when he was a toddler, that he looked more like Ellie's boss than like either of us. She'd laughed, a little too loud, and said, "Well, you know, genetics, totally random." I hadn't thought anything of it then. But now, that memory sat heavy in my chest. And when I thought back to the dinner with Caleb, the way he smiled, the way he watched her when she wasn't looking, a new thought crept in. One I hadn't considered before. What if Caleb wasn't new? What if he'd been there all along? It would explain the familiarity between them, the casual touch, the ease in their private conversation. That kind of comfort doesn't come from a few shared meetings at work. It comes from time, repetition, int*Macy. But Ellie had never once mentioned him before that night. The next morning, I watched her stir her coffee like nothing had changed. She sat in the same kitchen where we'd eaten thousands of breakfasts together. The sunlight streamed in through the blinds, painting warm stripes across the table, but everything felt cold to me. She smiled at me, that same sweet Ellie smile, and asked if I could take the car in for its oil change. I nodded. Didn't say a word about the card. Didn't ask about Caleb. Not yet. I wanted to see how long she'd keep pretending. Because here's the thing, when someone lies to you once, you might forgive it. Twice, and you start asking questions. But when the lies pile up, you stop trusting the words altogether and start watching the behavior. That's where I was now. Every movement, every excuse, every phone check, it all became data. A map pointing to a place I didn't want to go but couldn't ignore. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions, that I'd gather evidence, be rational. But deep down, something had already shifted. The man who'd been willing to look the other way? He was gone. And the one left behind? He was done being fooled. I flew out to Orlando that Monday for what was supposed to be a quick in-and-out meeting with a partner firm. I left early, kissed Ellie on the cheek, and she barely looked up from her laptop. Said she had a training review that night and might order in. No big deal. Brennan was already staying the night at her mom's, a plan she arranged earlier in the week. Everything sounded ordinary. But just before lunch, the meeting got canceled. Client got food poisoning or something. The rest of the team planned to spend the night anyway, hit the bar, enjoy the hotel. I wasn't in the mood. I missed my kid. And honestly, I wanted to test something. So I didn't call Ellie. Didn't text. I just hopped a flight back that afternoon and grabbed a rideshare straight from the airport. I remember looking out the window as the Miami skyline came into view. I had a knot in my stomach I couldn't shake. There was this little voice in my head whispering, "What do you think you're going to find?" And the answer was, I didn't know. But I needed to know. When I got to our building, it was around 7 p.m. The sun was just starting to dip behind the towers. I went up to our floor and tried the door. Locked. Not just locked, deadbolt from the inside. That was unusual. We almost never used the interior deadbolt unless we were all home for the night. I rang the bell. No answer. Waited. Rang again. I heard movement inside, soft footsteps, a quick rustling, then silence. About a minute later, the door opened. Ellie stood there, casual as anything, holding a grocery bag. Her hair was damp like she'd just showered. She smiled like I had just interrupted her folding laundry. "Hey, what are you doing here?" she asked, almost cheerfully. "The meeting got canceled," I said, watching her face closely. "Figured I'd come home and surprise you." She blinked, then laughed a little too loud. "Well, you definitely did. I just got back from the store. I was about to order dinner." "Yeah?" I asked, stepping past her into the apartment. It was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no TV. And the air smelled different. Like aftershave. Not mine. I set my bag down slowly and glanced around. There were 2 wine glasses on the kitchen table, both still damp, one with a smudge of lipstick. An empty bottle of Cabernet sat beside them, cork shoved halfway back in. Our wine opener lay beside it, still open. In the living room, a crumpled men's dress shirt, not mine, was draped over the arm of the chair. Light blue. Slim fit. The collar stiff like it had just come off someone's back. I turned to her, and for a second I didn't say anything. I just waited. She busied herself putting the grocery bag on the counter. I figured I'd try that new pasta recipe, the one from TikTok. I thought Brennan might like it. He's at your mom's. She paused. Right? I mean, yeah. I just wanted to try it. I walked to the bedroom. The bed was made, but too neatly. The kind of neat where someone had just rushed to fix it. There was a towel draped over the side of the hamper, and on the bathroom floor, next to her robe, were 2 pairs of socks. One was hers. The other? Definitely not. I walked back out. "You have company?" She shook her head, eyes wide. "No." What? "No. Why would you ask that?" I stared at her. Then my eyes drifted to the side table where her phone was plugged in. It buzzed once. I stepped closer and looked at the screen. One new message. From a contact saved as K. Martinez, client review. The preview line read, "Tonight was perfect. Wish I could have stayed longer." I didn't touch it. Didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. Ellie saw me reading it. Her face tightened, lips pressing together. Then she turned and started cleaning the counter as if tidying up would somehow erase what I saw. "You want to tell me who K. Martinez is?" I asked. "Just someone from work," she said too quickly. "Client reviews usually end with wine?" "I was drinking alone," she replied. I raised an eyebrow. And the other glass? She hesitated. I was going to have a second one. And the shirt? She froze. That's mine, she said finally. No, it's not, I said softly. I wear larges. That's a medium. And it's tailored. She didn't answer. I stood there, staring at her in our kitchen, this space we'd built a life in. The space where we hosted Brennan's birthday, where we danced to old jazz records, where she once told me I was her home. And now it felt like a stage. Like everything was performance, down to the placement of the wine glasses and the perfectly positioned throw pillows. I didn't say anything else that night. I showered, changed, and took the couch. Ellie retreated to the bedroom. She didn't knock. Didn't say goodnight. Just disappeared. At 2 a.m. I sat in the dark, staring at the hallway light, wondering how long she had been preparing the apartment for someone else. How many times she'd flipped the sheets, dimmed the lights, lit candles that weren't for me. I'd spent months telling myself the signs weren't real, that I was overthinking, overreacting, insecure. But now, the lies weren't subtle anymore. They were right there in plain view, and I couldn't unsee them. After that night, I didn't ask Ellie any more questions. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I went quiet. Not the kind of silence that begs for attention or tries to punish. This was surgical. Focused. I stopped reacting and started observing. Everything became data. While Ellie moved through our house like nothing had changed, I began tracking her. Her words, her routines, her patterns. And then slowly, I started digging. I remembered that our cloud account was still synced, the one we set up years ago to store Brennan's baby photos. She probably hadn't thought about it in ages. But I did. I logged in late one night, lights off, sitting at my desk with headphones in so I'd hear if she came down the hall. And what I found unraveled me. There were hundreds of messages and photos backed up from her phone, things I hadn't seen. Messages to and from Caleb. Voice notes. Photos that made my skin crawl. Most weren't explicit, not in the graphic sense, but they didn't need to be. Pictures of hotel lobbies with the caption, "Our spot." A blurry *T of a glass of wine across a table from Caleb's arm, his watch just visible. A mirror selfie from Ellie in a towel, captioned 10 more minutes. None of these had been sent to me. There was a short video of Brennan at a park, on a swing, laughing. Caleb's voice was in the background, laughing too. He called Brennan buddy. Ellie replied with a playful, "He's gonna wear us out." Wear us out? That stung. I dug deeper. She had created a hidden album on her phone, labeled with a random emoji, a mountain. Inside were more photos. Them at a beach. Them on a hotel balcony, faces mostly out of frame, but close enough to make it obvious. Caleb's hand on the small of her back. Her smile. Not the strained one she gave me at home, the real one. The one I hadn't seen in years. And then there were the texts. Some recent, some over a year old. Flirty at first. Then affectionate. Emotional. Deep. The kind you send someone you've planned a future with. One said, "I wish we didn't have to sneak around. I hate lying to him. But I can't lose Brennan. Not yet." I just stared at that one. Not yet? I couldn't feel my hands. My whole body went numb. This wasn't some impulsive, drunken mistake. This wasn't a one-night lapse or a fling that got out of hand. This was a life. A second, fully formed life she had been living parallel to ours, where I was the accessory. The placeholder. I checked her financial records next. Nothing too invasive at first, just the joint account. But then I found 2 cards I hadn't seen before. She'd opened a secondary checking account linked to a separate email. Small deposits, frequent cash withdrawals. Uber rides that didn't match her calendar. There were hotel stays too. One in Naples during a weekend she'd claimed was a strategic offsite. Another in Fort Lauderdale when she said she was staying with a friend after a wine night. Both booked under her maiden name. I remember staring at the statement, my eyes scanning over the dollar amounts, the dates, the times. It felt like I was reading a biography of someone I didn't know. A stranger. And yet I'd been sharing a home with her, brushing my teeth beside her, folding laundry with her on Sundays. I changed the password on our joint account that night. Canceled her card. Just to see how she'd react. She didn't say a word the next morning. Not until the 3rd day when she called from work, voice tight with frustration. "Hey, I tried to get groceries and my card didn't work," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "I restricted access." A long pause. "Why?" "I needed to review some expenses." Another silence. "Well, I need to eat," she said, half laughing, half serious. "Then use your own card." I hung up before she could respond. The fact that she didn't call back said everything. She wasn't scared. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't even apologetic. She was annoyed. Irritated that I had disrupted her rhythm. that I had touched a part of her world she thought was safe from scrutiny. That weekend, she made spaghetti for dinner and acted like nothing had changed. Asked if I wanted garlic bread. Talked about Brennan's upcoming school play. Her tone was light, her smile automatic. It was like watching an actor refuse to break character, even after the camera had stopped rolling. I couldn't do it anymore, so I started sleeping in the guest room. Told her I was having back issues, that the mattress was better. She didn't question it. Of course she didn't. We lived in a performance now, one where the audience had already left, but the actors kept going because the script hadn't ended. The only real thing left in our house was Brennan. And every time he laughed, every time he wrapped his arms around my neck and said, "You're the best, Dad," I felt my chest cave in, because now, I wasn't sure if that was true. And the doubt? It was eating me alive. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my brother. Not my best friend. I didn't even let myself think about it too long before I went through with it, because if I did, I might have stopped myself. And I couldn't afford to do that. Not now. I ordered the kit online. Overnight shipping. Discreet packaging. The kind of product made for people in quiet panic. It sat in my glove compartment for 2 days while I figured out how to go through with it. Then one night, when Ellie was at a late team dinner, and Brennan was brushing his teeth for bed, I knocked on the bathroom door. He opened it, grinning with foam on his lips, and held out the toothbrush like a trophy. "Look, Dad. 2 minutes, like the app said." I smiled, tousled his hair, told him I was proud of him. Then I took the brush and placed it gently into a sandwich bag when he wasn't looking. Sealed it, labeled it. There was a part of me that felt sick, like I was violating something sacred. But there was also a darker part, the one Ellie had trained into me through months of lies and manipulation, that whispered, "You need to know, or you'll never sleep again." I sent it off the next morning. The email came 5 days later. Subject line, DNA paternity results, complete. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it in the inbox, letting the cursor hover. My hand was cold. My mouth was dry. I sat in the parking lot outside a grocery store for 20 minutes. The engine off, my world suspended between two possibilities. Finally, I tapped. And read. Probability of paternity 0%. I remember the sound my breath made when I exhaled. It was like something tearing open inside my chest. 0. Not low. Not unlikely. Not inconclusive. 0. Brennan was not my son. Everything after that felt slow and mechanical. I closed the email. I turned on the car. I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2 like I was taking a test. The streets blurred. The sounds dulled. I walked through our front door and looked around our house. Suddenly unfamiliar. The family photos on the wall. The drawings Brennan had taped to the fridge. The key dish by the door that still held the key Ellie never used. She wasn't home yet, so I sat in the living room, staring at nothing, waiting to feel something that made sense. But all I felt was empty. I thought back to when Brennan was born. The moment Ellie placed him in my arms. Her eyes red with exhaustion, her smile tremulous. "He has your ears," she said. "Kind of," I replied. I didn't see it, but I didn't question it. Why would I? She insisted we name him after her grandfather. Claimed it was sentimental. I went along with it even though we'd talked about other names. She said she'd been too tired to argue in the delivery room, and I believed her. There were always explanations. Vague ones. Warm ones. Ones that made you feel guilty for doubting her. Like the timing. We weren't even trying back then. She said it just happened. A happy accident. But when I did the math now, really did it, the dates didn't make sense. Brennan was born 2 weeks early, she claimed. But she was vague on the due date even back then. Said the OB kept changing it. I saw through it now. She'd constructed the timeline to fit the story. The lies weren't bold. They were subtle, surgical, woven into moments of joy, of exhaustion, of vulnerability. That's how she got away with it. I walked into Brennan's room that night while he was sleeping. His face was peaceful. His little hands tucked beneath his chin. His chest rising and falling with soft, even breaths. He looked like any other kid, beautiful, innocent. And for a moment, I forgot everything. I only saw the boy I had tucked in every night, who made me cards for Father's Day, who shouted "Daddy" when I picked him up from school. But then I saw it again. The shape of his jaw, the deep brown eyes, the darker hair, the olive skin. Not mine. Never had been. Ellie came home late again that night. Smelled faintly of perfume and something unfamiliar. She walked in with that same half-smile she always wore lately, like a costume. "You're still up?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Couldn't sleep." She dropped her purse, slipped off her heels. "I'm exhausted. That dinner ran so long." I didn't answer. She paused. "Everything okay?" I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a stranger in my kitchen. A stranger who had lied every single day of our life together. About her job. About her love. About the child I thought was ours. "I got the DNA results," I said. Her face didn't register shock. Just stillness. Silence. For a moment I wondered if she had prepared for this moment, rehearsed it. Had she sat in her car some night and asked herself what she'd say if I ever found out? She didn't speak. 0%, I added. Still nothing. Then finally a whisper, "I'm sorry." That was it. No denial. No explanation. No plea. Just those two words delivered like a sigh. As if she knew the moment had always been coming. "How long have you known?" I asked. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "Since the beginning." I felt the room tilt. "Why?" Her lips trembled. "Because you were safe. You were stable. You loved me." And I panicked. "So you let me raise a child that wasn't mine?" Tears gathered in her eyes. "I didn't think you'd stay if you knew." "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't have." And I stood up, walked out of the room, and closed the door behind me. After the DNA results, I moved with quiet purpose. There was no dramatic confrontation, no screaming match in the middle of the kitchen. The damage had already been done, now it was about containment. I met with a family attorney 3 days later and told him everything. The infidelity. The false paternity. The years of deception. He didn't blink. Just nodded and said, "We've handled cases like this. It's going to be tough, but it's not impossible." We filed a petition to terminate my legal paternity. I wanted out of the financial obligations, out of the legal facade. It wasn't about punishing Brennan. It was about freeing myself from a lie I never chose to be part of. Ellie, of course, didn't take it quietly. She filed her own lawsuit demanding continued child support, claiming I had acted as Brennan's father since birth and that he was emotionally bonded to me. Her team used every email, every birthday photo, every "I love you, Dad" card as evidence. Things that once filled our home with joy were now ammunition in court. They painted me as a cold, abandoning man. A coward. Said I was trying to erase a child just because I was hurt. But they didn't talk about the betrayal. About the years I'd been living a lie. About the fact that she'd let me name a child after a man who wasn't even related to me. My lawyer fought back with quiet precision. He found documentation proving Caleb, the man from the dinner, the one who Ellie had insisted was just a colleague, had been involved since the beginning. We uncovered old insurance forms where Caleb was listed as an emergency contact for Brennan. Photos of Caleb at Ellie's baby shower, his hand casually resting on her shoulder. Records of hotel stays, restaurant bills, even text messages from Ellie to a friend where she wrote, "I know it's his, but Alex will never know." That line played on loop in my mind for days. When we finally got to court, it didn't feel like justice. It felt like a funeral. The judge reviewed the evidence, asked a few questions, and delivered the ruling. My legal rights and responsibilities as Brennan's father were terminated. No more support payments. No more parental obligations. I was free technically. Ellie didn't fight the verdict. I think she knew there was no point. She avoided eye contact as we left the courtroom. That was the last time I saw her in person. I moved to North Carolina not long after. Took a new job at a logistics firm in Raleigh. Clean slate. New apartment. Quiet mornings. I didn't bring much with me, just a few essentials and a box of old photos I wasn't ready to throw out yet. For a while, Ellie sent updates about Brennan. School report cards, pictures from soccer practice, little notes that said things like, "He misses you." I read the first few. Then I stopped. What could I say? That I missed him too? That none of this was his fault? That I wish things had turned out differently? Eventually, I blocked her number. There's no real ending to something like this. No dramatic fade-out or final closure. Just silence. And learning to live with it. People ask me now if I regret anything. If I'd go back and do it differently. And I always think the same thing. I regret trusting the wrong person. But I don't regret loving Brennan. Even if it was all built on a lie, that love was real. I just wish it had been enough to keep the truth from destroying everything.